Washington state is already giving minors housing without parental consent or notification. In 2023, the Washington state legislature passed Senate Bill 5599, which allows youth to live in host homes or youth shelters without parental consent or notification as long as they are seeking protected health care, which is abortion and so called gender affirming care. Take it one step further. In 2024, a few House Republicans co sponsored House Bill 2016, which would have allowed youth 16 and 17 years old to enter into lease agreements for their own housing. They didn't have to be emancipated, there was no court process, and no parent consent needed. Fortunately, House Bill 2016 didn't pass, but the state's intentions couldn't be more clear. Now, the Department of Commerce has released a report recommending $117 million a year to be spent on youth homelessness to fully fund programs specifically for unaccompanied minors, with services designed to operate independently of parents. When you connect the dots from Senate Bill 5599 and House Bill 2016, and now this report from the Department of Commerce, it's obvious Washington isn't just responding to youth homelessness. It's restructuring the parent child relationship, replacing families with government systems. Hey, everybody, I'm Julie Barrett, and I'm the founder of Conservative Ladies of America. And today we're going down the rabbit hole on Washington state youth homelessness. Now, you might be saying, well, Julie, you don't live in Washington anymore. Why do you even care? Well, this particular issue is extremely important to me, and I doubt that I'll ever stop sounding the alarm to the people of Washington on these terrible policies that are anti-family, anti-parent, and really mostly they're anti-child, because children have a right to be protected by their parents. And Washington state and many other states for that matter do not allow parents to have that level of protection and guidance of their children. It was actually in 2021 when my daughter was 14 years old that she was sent from Seattle Children's Hospital to a youth homeless shelter. And that began 2 years of our involvement in these Washington anti-parent, anti-family laws and the youth homeless system. Last fall, Washington State Department of Commerce came out with their report that was part of the directive of Senate Bill 5599. And in today's video, we're going to go through some of what that report is recommending the legislature do to actually increase the programs that it has for unaccompanied minors. And really, this is so shocking at how they really want to circumvent parents as much as they possibly can. Let's dig in. As I mentioned, Senate Bill 5599 became law in Washington state in 2023. It allows children to live in a host home or a youth shelter without parent consent or notification if they are seeking Washington-defined protected healthcare services, which is abortion and so-called gender affirming care. The bill also required the Office of Homeless Youth to report back to the legislature on how many youth were homeless and what recommendations they had for the legislature. So here's what we've learned from this new report. Nearly 5,400 youth under the age of 18 in Washington state are homeless on an annual basis. The Department of Commerce wants to spend almost $117 million every year to service these unaccompanied minors. The most expensive intervention is called the Community Support Team Model, a 2-year wraparound service that includes housing help, legal services, therapy, and healthcare navigation. Just that program alone would cost $78.4 million. Let that sink in. Nearly 70% of the total budget is designed for programs that deliberately work around parents. The report lays out a detailed ideal system for addressing youth homelessness. Some of those supports include flexible cash given directly to minors, no strings attached; host homes where youth live with unrelated and, I believe, unvetted adults; supportive leasing where nonprofit organizations would sign a lease for minors who are unable to do so; and emergency shelters that serve as respite from family conflict, even without allegations of abuse. And again, the state is recommending that minors be able to self-consent for all of this. Which brings me to House Bill 2016. In 2024, Representative Stephanie McClintock of LD 17 down in Southwest Washington co-sponsored this bill that would have given minors the right to sign their own leases. They had to be 16 or 17 without parental consent. And as I mentioned in the intro, no emancipation, no court process, and no parent consent. I testified against this bill in January of 2024 in the House Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee.
Parents like me who have the means and desires to help our children are forced out by laws just like this, allowing children who have very serious issues to play grown-up when most of them can't even function enough to go to school. This bill claims to solve a problem that was created by this very legislature. In 2022, it was ESSB 5883, the Youth Homeless Bill. Last year, it was Senate Bill 5599, allowing children to be in homeless shelters if they desire so-called protected health care, and many more before these. Except for a very few, most of these youth are suffering from mental illness and addiction. They are incapable of caring for themselves, let alone the responsibility of rent and utilities. If the sponsors of this bill truly want to help kids, start talking to the parents, the social workers, and medical providers who are so frustrated with the inability to help because of the constraints of Washington laws. This is not compassion. It's not a solution. It's a recipe for more disaster and destruction for our kids.
Thankfully, House Bill 2016 didn't pass, but the Commerce Report is calling for essentially the same policy goals through administrative action and budget demands. The Commerce Report doesn't stop at funding. It makes clear policy demands to the legislature. It wants to permanently allow minors consent to housing without their parents' consent. It also wants to change the law so that nonprofits can sign for housing leases and utilities on behalf of the minors. They want to shield caregivers from criminal liability if they house a runaway minor. The report also calls to align all systems, courts, schools, healthcare, child welfare, to support youth living apart from their families. They're also calling on policies that would legally require state agencies to collaborate on youth housing without parental involvement. And get this, they want to make these changes permanent and statewide. If you think this is about helping kids in crisis, think again. This is a state-sanctioned shift in authority from parents to the government. It's about removing you from the decision-making process for your own child. In an article I wrote on the Conservative Ladies of Washington blog in 2023, after Senate Bill 5599 passed, I wrote about the gaslighting effort behind this bill. The Democrats wanted to try to convince people that this wasn't actually a state-sanctioned kidnapping law and that people were being dramatic and exaggerating. The Commerce Report proves that my article was not an exaggeration and was, in fact, a roadmap. Now they're asking for massive funding, legislative changes, and legal protections, not to bring families together, but to push parents out. We can all agree that no child should be homeless, but Washington State's plan is not to bring restoration, but to bring redefinition. We need government policies that support family reunification, that equip parents and guardians, not bypass them, that require real accountability for agencies that are housing minor children. And most importantly, reject the idea that minors can or even should live independently of their parents and guardians. Washington's war on parental rights is very real and it's accelerating rapidly. Since I've been involved in Washington state legislation in 2022, each year there has been a new big bad bill that seeks to undermine parents and families and really make the state guardians of the children. This is very dangerous. It is not pro-child. Children have a right to be protected by their parents, and it's critical that we be vigilant and we be loud and we be engaged in our government processes and step in between government and our families and our children. I believe that this policy agenda that would allow minors to consent for their own housing will be back in Washington state legislature in 2026. And hopefully this time it will come without Republican support. Children are not mature enough. They are not ready to be making these kinds of decisions on their own. They need the love and guidance and support of their families. And it's time for Washington state government and every other state government for that matter to stop interfering with our families. This report is very concerning to me, and it really tells me that Washington state is very focused on accelerating the youth homeless industry in Washington state. And so I encourage you to take a look through this report. I've got it linked in the video description. I'd love to hear your comments on this. What are your thoughts on this? I know it seems like it's this issue that's really difficult to wrap your head around because it seems like this is something that is so anti-American and anti-family, and it very much is. But I want to caution you, this is very real. I would say that it destroyed our family, but God, and I know that He can bring full restoration. And fortunately, now that all of our kids are over 18, we are beginning that healing process, but it inflicted serious damage on our child and on our family. And I want to do everything I can to prevent other families, especially children, from going through what my child went through and what our family went through. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please do make sure that you share this with other citizens, even people outside of Washington, because as I mentioned earlier, kids can be trafficked into Washington and then they will be protected by the state's shield law. And so it really puts parents in other states at a disadvantage. It's critical that parents know that we've got these laws going on in a lot of the blue states around our country. So thanks so much for watching. Thanks for sharing. If you're not already, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our Substack, as that's the best way to get breaking alerts and calls to action. Please give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you again next time.